Welcome, my fellow Americans. These are very, very dark days for those of us who care about liberty. Not even politics, not even the parties. These are very, very dark days. You are staring tyranny in the eye. You, my listeners. This country is fundamentally transforming as the Democrats have wanted. Away from a constitutional republic, an understandable, equally applied rule of law, in which the Democrat Party seeks to monopolize politics, the government, and to use the iron fist of federal law enforcement against those who do not buckle. We've never been here before, we Americans. We've never done this to each other. That's why when we hear this no labels group or can't we get along or bipartisanship or common sense and common ground, there can be none of that when they're trying to put people in prison. Let's start from the beginning and then we will spend some time on this, America. January 6th. We know what took place on January 6th. But the Democrats have been trying to tie this to Donald Trump. And they've tried to concoct laws or inferences from laws to apply against him. He's the only top-level individual in Washington, D.C. on January 4th, who suggested that the mayor of Washington, that the Speaker of the House, might want him to send in the National Guard to protect the building on January 6th. That should have been the beginning and end of this thing. It was turned down by the Democrats. We have no idea what Mitch McConnell did, and Mitch McConnell is not even talking today. Why? Because Mitch McConnell supports all of this. That's why. And so what this prosecutor is doing is unheard of. What the Biden administration is doing is unheard of. Let me explain this in some detail. The Constitution sets forth the mechanism for choosing electors for president and vice president. Not the executive branch, for sure. Not the sitting president, for sure. There is no Department of Justice in the Constitution. There is no U.S. Attorney in the Constitution. None of that. They hadn't even created them yet. But they did create this government, and the election process is a purely political process. And so, if a political party is duking it out in a state, and that political party sees a close election, and after the votes are quote-unquote counted after weeks of delay and harvesting and all the rest, and the party that is behind by 10,000 votes, 12,000 votes, 5,000 votes, feels that in the end they will succeed, they are free to send a slate of electors to the Archivist of the United States, who holds them until, under statute, January 6th, at which time they, along with the other party's electors, perhaps certified by the state, perhaps certified by the Secretary of State and the governor, are sent to a joint meeting of Congress. And it's up to Congress to sort this out. Congress can easily say, no, those other electors are out. No, we accept the results in this state or that state. No, that's out. That's gone. That's been done in the past. It was done in 1960 in Hawaii. It's been done in other states. Almost done in Florida in 2000 as a result of what the Democrats were doing. There's nothing criminal about it. There's nothing devious about it. There's nothing illegal about it. You're not obstructing an election. You're not obstructing a result. You're not obstructing Congress. Congress will make the determination on what to count, what not to count, which is exactly what Congress did. The process is not supposed to be criminalized, where a single grand jury in Washington, D.C., being fed one-sided arguments by a special counsel appointed by the party in power, by a prosecutor who's threatening lawyers and threatening witnesses with charges, with long-term sentences if they don't buckle under. As if that's the pursuit of justice and punishing wrongdoing. What you are watching today is an insurrection. It's a war on the voting system. It's a war on the Constitution. It's a war on the Republican Party and, of course, on Donald Trump. If they get away with this, the country will never be the same, ever. The challenging of elections occurs all the time, and not just in court. All the time. And it's up to Congress to sort it out. That's what the Constitution says. Congress has the final say. Congress can throw out electoral college votes willy-nilly if it wants to. These battles have been fought, especially early in our history. We also have Democrats in 2004, and I wish the Bushies and the Rhinos and the Never-Trumpers would comprehend this, who sought to prevent George Bush's reelection, as they did in 2000, when the Supreme Court had to step in and stop the Florida Supreme Court from trying to steal the election from Bush and give it to Gore. 2004, George Bush won Ohio by a fairly substantial amount. But the Democrats, they went to the floor of the House, which is where these meetings are held, given that that is a larger area than in the Senate. And perhaps up to 36 of them challenged the election, starting with Ohio. Among them, Jamie Raskin. Among them, Benny Johnson, January 6 committee members. They wanted to reverse the election. They wanted the Ohio electors thrown out. They failed. Were they prosecuted? Were they investigated? Of course not. Well, Mark, that's the system that's set up. Well, the system that is set up is the same system that these other legislatures or the Republican Party was using in these other states. The same system. Just a different way of challenging it. Ultimately, Congress has the say. A grand jury does not have a say. A U.S. attorney does not have a say. The Attorney General of the United States for the opposition party does not have a say. The executive branch has no say. None. False electors, fake electors, to give it the tinge of criminality. Congress is meeting. If they believe that these are false electors or fake electors, then they don't count them. If there's competing lists of electors from a state, then they choose one over another, they choose neither. That's how it works. So they try and muddle the water. that Donald Trump in a speech incited violence, then why isn't Schumer in prison? And he was inciting violence against the Supreme Court. In fact, why aren't all the leftists in prison when they're inciting violence against justices, against their own country? Why isn't there crime tape around the DNC and Hillary Clinton's house and Bernie Sanders' house? Nobody who objected in 2000 or 2004 was investigated. And they objected in 2016, too, to Donald Trump. They tried to throw out legitimate electors. But that's okay. They followed the law and raised their objections, and their fellow members of Congress turned them down. That's exactly how it works under the Constitution without the statute. That is, Congress has the final say. The framers could not possibly have dreamt that something called a federal prosecutor and a grand jury, where witnesses and potential defendants aren't even allowed to have lawyers present, would make determinations in lieu of the full Congress meeting on January 6th. Be very interesting to see what this fool prosecutor has pulled together. And I want you to understand something. He's the ugly face of all this. It's Mr. Magoo, the phony attorney general, and his comrades, his radical left-wing Obama comrades in the assistant attorney general slots, the deputy attorney general, associate attorney general slots, who are sitting down like a shadow Politburo, secret Politburo, making these decisions. And self-righteously saying to themselves, we have to uphold the law, you know. We've got to do what's right. We've got to do what's right. It doesn't matter that he's running for the presidency. We cannot be intimidated. We must go forward. The Marxists/fascists in the Department of Justice. And the timing of the letter that was sent to President Trump's lawyers Sunday night. Not Monday morning, not Friday evening, Sunday night. Now, why would a prosecutor do that, Mr. Producer? To create as much havoc, personal discomfort, and embarrassment from a former president as possible. The government doesn't do anything on Sunday night. Doesn't do anything most nights, but Sunday night in particular. Saturday night, too. Why would they do that? Because they're nasty. They're a disgrace. They're in court arguing that they want to continue the documents case. They want that trial in December, no matter what. I hope the judge is listening. It's not about what the government and the prosecution wants. It's what's in the best interest of the country. A handful of these people are destroying the country, and they are tearing it apart. Never before has a political party using the FBI and the Department of Justice and a phony special prosecutor gone so far as to indict the opposition candidate, and not just indict him, but overwhelm with dozens of charges, and done so in the middle of a campaign. Now he wants to do it again on January 6th. January 6th. Oh, they'll come up with obstruction. They'll dust off some old Civil War statutes and so forth. But it doesn't matter. You got almost 40 counts in the document case. God knows how many counts this will be. All they need is one count in any of the cases. One count. They get them on one count. And then what happens?